Hey there friends, today Paulides, Canadian Missing Project, copyrighted edition for our video channel. And yes, this is a review of the Skinwalker Ranch episode that appeared on the History Channel April 18th, 2023, just the other day. And I wanted to jump on it and get it done and talk about it, because I think it was an impressive episode. There's a lot of things that happened there that kind of, I think, surprised the majority of the audience, even though it was announced a while back. And let's get right into it. So first of all, Travis Taylor, the chief scientist at Skinwalker, I think they've got an extraordinary guy there. And here's why. He relates to people at all educational levels very well. He doesn't have an air about him of superiority or he knows it all. He listens and he takes input very well from the team at Skinwalker. And that team has supported him well. And this is important. If you think about what's gone on at the ranch since we've been watching, they had a cow die under unusual circumstances. They've had a history of cows having strange things happen to them at the ranch. They've had unusual things flying in the skies. They've had unusual things on the ground. Strange place. So, in our UFO class, which I will be picking up again. We're not going to lose any distance there, but this is going to be a supplement to it, because everything they're talking about at the ranch in this episode had to do with things in the air. Very little about some possibility of something under the ground on the ridge. But Travis Taylor let go something that the public probably first heard about last night or Tuesday night. And that was, first of all, he kind of sat down and told the group, hey, I wasn't able to tell you this before, but I was the chief scientist for the UAP task force for the government. And some of the guys kind of seemed a little put off that he didn't tell them this before, but he said, hey, by law, I couldn't tell you. And I really thought hard about this one. Now, he said he went to the government and told them about this 1.6 gigahertz signal that they were getting at the ranch. And he was concerned if it was a national defense issue. And when he went to them and talked to them, they just brought him on board and put him on the task force as the chief scientist. Well, that's pretty cool. I think if I was him, I would have taken that job. Now, the other part of this is in April of last year, Travis was hired by a company called Radiance Technology. And they work in the defense sector. And what they say that they do is they do cybersecurity, system engineering, strategic intelligence, and technological intelligence as well. They have 900 employees, good-sized company, and they're employee-owned. Now, if you look on their website, they have a lot of ex-military people there. So they're working in this space that Travis is working in at the ranch, no doubt. Now let's go back to the UAP task force hiring him. Now, did the UAP task force hire him because he had access to the ranch? And they could ask him to do things at the ranch and he would do them. Well, we can only surmise that would make sense, wouldn't it? So, if the government hired him because of his access, or because, well, let's put it this way, I would have hired Travis. He's just a brilliant guy. But looking back at the things that they were interested in the last couple of years, remember they had a Native American come out and they talked about some rocks in a specific location that almost came into a vortex circle. And they did some work around that, and they had almost a column, invisible column, coming up through the sky at that location. I think that might have intrigued the UAP task force. Unidentified aerial phenomena. That's what that is. Now we'll talk about this as we go forward. Now remember, they got that 1.6 gigahertz signal. Travis went and reported it to the Pentagon, and then immediately got invited to be the chief scientist. Now they told him that the 1.6 isn't us transmitting, and they didn't believe it was an adversary, which means that it's something else that could even be more intriguing. Now, Travis said there's no more need for secrets because he's not on the UAP task force anymore. He asked a question, what's inside that mesa? When they drilled in there, this was last year, when they drilled in there, they got little pieces of metal. And they even showed it that when they were pulling the drill bit out, they stated that it was the same material that's the protective covering on the space shuttle. And they said it's very unusual. Well, how would a protective covering for the space shuttle end up inside of a mesa? That's pretty weird. And they never gave the precise breakdown of the metals, but it isn't something that normally was found in nature. Intriguing. Now the triangle area has that 1.6 gigahertz there. Brandon Fugal, the owner of the ranch, said, "Are we seeing portals opening here at the ranch?" Because they saw something under the helicopter when it was flying. Well, let's go back several years. When NIDS, the National Institute of the Discovery of Sciences, was being operated by Mr. Bigelow when he owned the property there, I think the only thing you could say is that there was a portal that opened on the ranch. And they had a physicist on site that saw a very small light on kind of near the ground. And they were looking through it through night vision. They couldn't see it through the naked eye. And then they kept watching, and he was with another scientist, and it slowly started getting bigger and bigger. And they said it was almost like a 3D version of looking into a tunnel. And then they saw something come out that was human-shaped, entirely black. They couldn't see the face. Came down, jumped down onto the ground, ran off. Next day they went out, they couldn't find any tracks. I'm sorry, folks, that's a portal. What else could you say it is? Really? So does the ranch have a history of portals? Yes. And that story has been talked about by the NIDS team, and Colin Kelleher and George Knapp have written about it in their books before. Now, in this episode of Skinwalker, they talked a lot about Lidar. And they brought in a technologist that used a handheld Lidar device, hung it outside the helicopter, and was trying to take a reading and scan the area over certain portions of the ranch. And Travis was sitting next to the technologist in the helicopter. And then the other team, part of the team, was in the east field broadcasting at 1.6 gigahertz. Now before we get too deep into this, I think it's important that you understand Lidar, because it's different technology than other things. It, in essence, is light detection and ranging. It's lasers that are safe to the eye and that can help you and I see the world in 3D. This device shoots millions of lasers out, and they immediately register the time it takes for the laser to go and hit something and come back. And as you move around, it gives them a 3D version. And there's millions of those lasers going out all the way around this device that's running in a circle around the handheld device. That information goes into a computer that was sitting on Travis's lap that later was downloaded and then makes a image of what that device saw hanging out the side of the helicopter. And it calculates that distance immediately. And it's repeated millions of times a second. So imagine a camera takes a picture of something in 2D, but Lidar is 3D. And what they showed in this episode was a specific column above that vortex logo that's sitting on the ground. And then they also saw something above the triangle area in the neighborhood of where the helicopter was flying around. And as the helicopter's flying around, it's getting buffeted very hard. Now, at one point, the pilot said there's no wind and there's not enough wind to buffet the helicopter that hard, and it felt like it was being pushed. Then later in the day, they said that they had winds up to 30 miles an hour, which would definitely be enough to push a helicopter around. Now, there was this thing they called it a red dot, and you could see it on the screen. It was just a dot when you looked at it. It was next to the helicopter while it was being pushed, and you could see this from the downloaded data. One of the guys said it feels like a vortex in this spot. Wind speeds registered on the helo, the pilot said, were insignificant. And Travis said there was no scientific explanation for the helicopter getting a violent push through the sky when there's no wind. They said that there was something red outside that they could see on the unit, about 300 feet above the ground, and it was easily distinguishable from the ground. And then they had a GPS electromagnetic discrepancy on the helicopter. Very unusual, really unusual. And it got to the point where they had to land the helicopter in a field, shut everything down, reboot it, and reset it. That is weird. Now, what could be doing this? I told you last year that Bruce Maccabee, another physicist who's a friend of mine, has said that he thinks there's something buried in the ground at the ranch that acts almost like a giant transmitter of sorts. And he said it could be some combination of metals that were put there that don't, in your mind, make an actual, say, big disc. But just by being there and the combination of metals maybe is a disc. Fascinating thought. Well, after they reset it on the ground, they took back up and above the triangle, they see this red dot again. The pilot again says, seems like we're in a vortex, wind shifted, counterclockwise over the ranch. Helo was pushed around a lot in the sky. Over the east field, this red dot was floating above the field, and the Lidar operator said maybe it's just not accurate. And what's happening here is the Lidar operator has never seen anything like this. The Lidar was on supposedly to take issues and scans of the ground, but they're ending up looking more in the sky than they are on the ground, which isn't really what Lidar was meant to do, but in this circumstance, that's what it was all about, which probably threw him for a loop. And the operator of the Lidar actually said later, he goes, well, maybe it's not accurate. He's questioning it because it's so unusual. And then they explain that there's this column that goes up above this vortex logo that was on the ground in the east field. And then above this column that they saw last year is this little red dot. Now here's the part that's really weird. But Angie and I are watching this on our big screen, and I actually got up, and when they were showing this red dot on the screen, Travis got up too. He walked up and he looked at it, and he says, you know, I think it's about 100 feet across, and darn if it didn't look like something with wings. Just saying. If you get to watch the episode again, stop it at that point and walk up and take a look. Looks like something with wings. Just saying. The pillar still comes up through the middle. This is directly above those circular rocks. The operator said that it could be some type of ghosting that's occurring, meaning there's nothing there, but something happened and it is ghosting. So let's think about that for a second. If it's never happened to him before, and he never said it did, why is it occurring at the ranch? And if he can't explain why it's ghosting, well then maybe there's something there. And remember last year, they shot a rocket right up through this area. And as the rocket's going up, it veered off as though something was pushing it as it got into this specific area at about 5,000 feet. Well, in last year's work, they were concentrating on that area at 5,000 feet. Now, in that episode that we watched Tuesday, it seemed like there was a lot going on at 300 feet. The bigger question to me is how much is going on at the ranch that we never see? And another question, and I've asked this before of Prometheus that does the camera work on this. Why don't they have a FLIR unit looking at the sky 24/7 above the ranch? A FLIR unit, a forward-looking infrared camera that detects heat signatures in the sky. Seems like a natural. Because if the Lidar is detecting something in that sky that's a structure that laser beams are bouncing off of, then you would think that there would be a different temperature of whatever that is versus the sky, meaning it would show up on FLIR. Just saying, folks, I'm not that smart. That's what I'd be doing. Remember they said that they had electromagnetic interference. And that electromagnetic interference got in the way with their electronics, and they had to stop, set down, reset their GPS, reset other devices in the helicopter. Now, they stated in the next show they wanted to bring in a series of drones and fly them through that area. I've been around something like that before. It's pretty cool, actually. All of the drones are set on a specific GPS coordinates. They aren't being flown by everybody individually. It's like they're automatically tuned to fly a specific course. And while they're flying, they have specific lights on them, and it's a light show. Now, Travis is saying that he wants to fly the drones through this area and see what happens. Well, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but if the helicopter had to set down because there was electromagnetic interference with the GPS and the other devices, if they fly 5 or 10 drones through that area, won't they have just a big heap of metal? Just saying. I brought this up before, but at one point I said, why don't they put a big balloon, I'm talking big balloon, up above, and just drop, say, flour over the top of that area. And I know it sounds like a very stupid idea, and it probably is. But if there was something there, would the flour outline whatever the device is that's in that air? Now, the device over that vortex area, it just looks like a strange column of rock. It didn't look like anything specific to me, even though it might be something really important. But that red dot, when they zoomed on it, to little old Dave, it looked like some kind of flying device. I'm really impressed with Brandon Fugal, the owner of the ranch. He has never shown any indication of holding back resources to do the research on the ranch, which is really impressive. Now, I have no insight, no clue. Nobody will talk to me about what's going on at the ranch and what they filmed for the last 6 months. But I can tell you that what they're doing up to this point seems to make a lot of sense. Kind of is something that I would do. They do have a good monitoring system of what flies through that zone inside their technical center. It's pretty impressive. But on Prometheus's side, I think on top of that ridge, they ought to have like a permanent camera and set up and watch that sky above the triangle and above the vortex 24/7 with a FLIR camera and just see what they see. Now, maybe something doesn't want them to see what's going on. And maybe something really did push the helicopter, like the pilot said. When I was sitting on the couch with Angie and we were watching this, we had a few discussions about the safety of that helicopter in that area. I'm praying everyone's going to be okay. Quick story. When I left Fremont Police and went to San Jose, a buddy of mine, who was a longtime pilot even then, left Fremont with me and came to San Jose, and he got on the San Jose flight team. He was a helicopter pilot with them for 16 years, had one emergency landing. And just the other day, I was talking to him about helicopters. And he said, I'm not flying them anymore, Dave. He goes, it's behind me. I'm flying planes, but I won't fly a helicopter anymore. I said, why's that? He said, in the back of my mind, I don't think they ever have finally tuned the helicopter and have gotten it to that point where it's 100% safe. He says there's still some things that they still haven't figured out about helicopters. And he goes, probably won't do it in our lifetime, but I've had enough. He goes, I've skimmed life a few times in that helicopter, and he says I'm walking away from it. And the way that helicopter the other night was getting bounced around, and knowing what happened at that ranch in that area in the past, I wouldn't be flying in and above there. That's just me. But I admire those guys that are doing it. They're doing good work. So, that's Skinwalker Ranch, April 18th, 2023. That's my review of it. I'm looking forward to this season. I'm liking it. I was a little bit worried that Travis may not be coming back, but it's good to see this whole team back again. There's continuity and cohesion to them, you can tell. So anyhow, put your comments up there. If you want me to do anything with this, if you want something done in the future, let me know. Take a different turn with it. In the meantime, Paulides out.